Now, Australians never tire of telling you that theirs is the lucky country. They find it an amusing way of winding up the Poms. Well, tell that to some of the 70,000 Indians who go to Australia to study. These overseas students contribute to an industry worth more to the Australian economy than wool and meat combined. But now that business is in jeopardy, undermined by fears about student safety and questions about whether the qualifications being offered are worth the paper they're written on. The issue is creating headlines in India and causing a headache for the government of Kevin Rudd. Nick Bryant reports now from Sydney.
It's a $15 billion industry what's been created.
We want our people, our friends to be safe in this country. That's it.
We are sick. We are really sick with all these happenings.
When these Indian students arrived in Australia, probably the last thing they thought they'd end up doing is having a standoff with police. This is supposed to be the no-worries nation, a place where overseas visitors are compensated for the distance they travel by the warm welcome they receive on arrival. But over the course of the southern winter, Indian students have been the target of a spate of violent muggings and attacks. This protest in Melbourne was to demand protection and respect.
We are here for the protection of Indian students, like the students who have been stabbed from last couple of months. The police is not doing anything in our favor, and we students have to do something for our protection. Otherwise, one day we will be killed a bit like animals over here.
In front of all this police force.
What happened, mate? He get beaten by 3 guys.
It's a highly sensitive issue for the Australian government. Tertiary education is a multi-billion-dollar industry. After coal and iron ore, it's the country's third most lucrative export. It was the beauty of Sydney that drew Sumit Purdani from Delhi, but he'll remember his time here for the ugliness of the welcome. He came to Australia to study for an MBA, but less than a month after arriving, he was set upon by a gang of youths while he was on his way to a Hindu temple.
They started hitting me on my face, and my stomach. I've got a frozen shoulder. It was really bad for a month or so. It was really, really bad. I've got some blood from my nose and my mouth as well, so that was a bit, so not to worry about that. But the frozen shoulder was there for a month. They started hitting me on my stomach. I don't know how I escaped that.
This, in your mind, was definitely a racist attack.
Exactly right, yes. It was a racist attack.
Because you're Indian?
Yes.
More recently, Sumit was attacked for a second time. Indian students have come to expect being the victims of racist violence. How many people do you know who have been attacked?
Around 10 to 12. Out of the lot of 60, 70 people I have over here, good friends, I know 10 to 12 who have been attacked. That was for money, that was for the sort of experience I've got, the same things.
So there's a very strong likelihood that you will be attacked?
Right. And people who are not attacked at the moment, even their parents are calling them up to come back. They don't want them to be in Australia anymore. Sort of things are happening, going on.
My parents are calling me.
In a country determined to assert itself much more forcefully on the international stage, the Indian student attacks have at times received almost blanket coverage. So the assaults quickly escalated into a full-blown diplomatic incident, and the Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd tried to take the heat out of the row with some soothing words and some curry diplomacy.
My kids love Bollywood. Bollywood's a thing with all of our kids. They just love it. So we actually have this deep affection for your country and for your culture. I always say this too. Imagine if we never had Indian food in Australia. We would be sentenced to 100 years of English cuisine.
We want education, not racist exploitation.
Since the end of May, police confirmed there have been 97 attacks on Indian students in Sydney, Melbourne and Adelaide. Student welfare groups say the true figure is double that, but many assaults go unreported. So these angry demonstrations are showing no sign of abating. In fact, the beatings issue has brought other grievances to the surface. The first wave of protests came in response to the attacks on Indian students and the failure of the Australian authorities to offer adequate protection. These protests are part of a second wave, joined by people who haven't necessarily been beaten up, but who feel ripped off by a country that is keen to take their money, but unwilling to offer guarantees about the quality of their education. Among the protesters were Indian students from this private vocational college in Sydney, which went into administration in late July, shutting its doors on 500 mainly overseas students. This little-known institution has ended up being highly emblematic, for Stirling College quickly became synonymous with what Australians would call shonky educational standards, a much wider problem. Some students have paid over £10,000 in tuition fees for what their teachers now say was a dodgy education.
Initially, I felt terrible. When I first started with the college, I felt terrible. I just felt very uneasy about the whole thing. There I was teaching them a subject called legal and ethical issues, and nothing about what I could see was very, very ethical.
These two lecturers from Stirling College didn't want to be identified because they still work in the industry.
The resources were minimal. If you wanted to show a PowerPoint presentation, you couldn't because the walls were too dirty and there wasn't a screen that you could pull down. There were no teaching resources, like a teaching manual for that particular subject or any subject for that matter. So teachers had to pull together their own material. The students didn't have any prescribed books or any handouts or any material to work from. Generally, overall, the conditions were poor.
Many students have been extremely traumatised, and each day we're hearing of new cases where students are getting ill and possibly becoming suicidal. And it's of grave concern to us as educators that the system has allowed this to happen and has kept these students hanging in limbo on a promise that they're not delivering on.
Former Stirling students Sashi Ray and Hardeep Kaur bringing their concerns to the state government of New South Wales. They've been in the forefront of the campaign, but they've been reluctant to reveal their predicament to their parents back home in India.
They are calling us every day and they are asking how your study is going, you're nearly going to finish. And I had to just say them, yeah, everything is fine, because I can't tell them. They will be in a shock. Because we spent a lot of $1,000, about $25,000, and you can say them, my college is closed down and now I'm not studying. How would they feel? They will be in a shock. I didn't tell anything to them.
Somebody, please take care of the international students. We are not here only for the milking. We are not the cash cow, please. We are here for the education.
Somewhat ironically, the Indian Consul General requested a posting to Sydney because his daughter is studying in the city. He wants tighter regulation of this multi-billion-dollar industry from the state and federal government.
Well, it's got to recognise that it's got the goose, which lays the golden egg. You don't want to kill the goose. You have to figure out a way by which you look after the goose. And the only way you can do that is to make sure that you get the foxes out of the way. And which means that you deal with those who are trying to damage the goose. That's the private education providers. Not all of them, many of them. Recruiting agents and migration agents, not all of them again, many of them. And of course, a number of employers who cheat the students. They give Australian education a bad name.
Australia is often stereotyped as an unusually racist country, partly because its white Australia immigration policy lasted until the early 1970s. But perhaps the biggest story of the post-war years is how a monocultural society became a successfully multicultural society without much of a backlash. Geographically and diplomatically, it's well placed to have an enhanced international role in what's likely to be an Asia-dominated century. But alienating students from the emerging giants of India and China could impede its global ambitions.